Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. There's a lot of people out there who take that verse to prove that Jesus was a false teacher. Because Matthew chapter 24, Jesus describes all the things that happened before Jesus is coming. And he very clearly says that this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Mark chapter 14, people ask, "Are you the Christ, Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus said, "I am. And you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Boom, this is amazing, guys. He is not talking to you or me. He was talking to the people who he was talking to at this time. He was speaking directly to them. So we can't assume that Jesus was talking about, several thousand years in the future, talking about his final coming, the judgment of the entire world, with the resurrection of the dead, right? So today I'm going to explain to you what Jesus was actually talking about in Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. First, we got to start at Luke 23. "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her? How often I wanted to gather your children together the way a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you did not want it. Behold, your house is being left to you desolate. For I say to you, from now on you will not see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Remember, verse 38 is key. Behold, your house is being left to you desolate. This is present tense for him. There's something huge that was happening in the first century. And he goes on to explain in chapter 24, where the disciples came up to point out the temple buildings to him. And Jesus answered and said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another, which will not be torn down." He was talking about the absolutely amazing and stunning second temple in Jerusalem. This is what Jesus is talking about. He's not talking about the end of the world. Now, as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Okay, when will these things? Well, what things? The destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. That's what this topic is about. So everything that you're seeing here is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, not the end of the world. In fact, you go to Matthew chapter 25. This is when he talks about the end of the world. When he comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne, and then he's going to judge all the nations, and then, the wicked will go into eternal punishment and the righteous into eternal life. We have to remember that Jesus is talking directly to the disciples here. Now, there's a lot of times where Jesus is talking to the disciples, and we can apply it to today, but clearly, again, we're talking about the destruction of the Jerusalem. He's talking to the people and what they're going to experience within the next 40 years, because the second temple was destroyed in 70 AD. "For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many, and you are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for these things must take place, but that is not the end." Okay, so when we're talking about the end here, you have to recognize that Jesus is talking about the end of the age. This might be a little confusing if you're not reading Luke chapter 21 along with Matthew chapter 24, because we get some more info here. We notice that there is a time of the Gentiles that must be fulfilled. So obviously, if there is a time of the Gentiles, there must have been a time of the Jews. We are currently living in the times of the Gentiles, and when Jesus was alive and they were speaking here, they were talking about the age of the Jews, the Judaic age. That's the end of the age that they're talking about. This was when the old covenant order was done away with, and the new age, the new messianic age comes. "For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and in various places there will be famines and earthquakes." You'll notice that in Acts chapter 11, verse 28, "And one of them named Agabus stood up and indicated by the Spirit that there was going to be a great famine all over the world, and this took place in the reign of Claudius." Now, when was the reign of Claudius, you might ask? 41 to 54 AD, okay? So that's just one example of a famine that happened, after Jesus's ascension into heaven and before the destruction of the temple. These are the beginning of birth pain. Then they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you, and you'll be hated by all nations because of my name. So one thing we have to note here is when Jesus is talking about all nations, we have to recognize when he's talking to the disciples in this Middle Eastern context in 1st century AD, nobody at that time period had South America or Antarctica in mind. They haven't discovered those places. So the entire world pretty much consisted of, the Roman Empire, Egypt, Israel, just that general area. So that's the whole world to them. That's all nations. And at that time many will fall away and will betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and will deceive many. That's something that has been true throughout the last 2,000 years, but especially in the early church, you can just look at all of the letters of Paul and the epistles of John. They use extremely strong language in their letters, and they condemn false teachers a lot. You know, let anyone who preaches a false gospel be accursed and all that stuff, right? But yeah, lawlessness multiplied, but the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. The gospel of the kingdom shall be proclaimed in the whole world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. Again, not the entire Western world that we know today, that includes like North America, South America. These people here listening to Jesus' words have no idea what South America would even be, right? Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Guess what happened when Christians saw the abomination of desolation? They actually fled to the mountains. This is called the flights to Pella. It has been a long established tradition that the Jewish Christians fled from Jerusalem to Pella before the fall of the holy city in 70 AD. Whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his garment. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. There's a lot of people who think that the tribulation is in the future. The great tribulation hasn't happened yet, but it has. And unless those days had been cut short, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Now, one thing you have to recognize, once again, Luke 21, this is Luke's version of the Olivet Discourse. He's writing towards a bit more Gentile audience. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is at hand. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains, okay? Because these are the days of vengeance, so that all things which are written must be fulfilled. Let's just go back to Daniel chapter 9 real quick. This is the famous 70 weeks prophecy. 70 weeks have been determined for your people and for your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the Holy of Holies. All of this must happen within the 70 weeks. And if you don't know, each week represents 7 years. So 7 times 70 is 490 years from when this was being written. And all of this must take place to seal up vision and prophecy. When was vision and prophecy sealed up? When Revelation was written. That was the last book of the Bible. Therefore, that 70 weeks prophecy must have been fulfilled. A lot of people think that the last 7 years of this 70 weeks prophecy hasn't taken place, and that the first 483 years have been fulfilled, but, you know, God skipped thousands of years, and then it's going to be fulfilled at the end of time, you know, before Jesus comes back. That's where people get the 7-year tribulation. But upon further inspection of these scriptures, that is not the most logical way of interpreting these things. But immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the skies, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. Now, that certainly sounds like the second coming of Jesus at the end of time. But remember, Mark chapter 14, the Son of Man is sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. This is Jesus at the right hand of the Father. Remember that? The Apostle Peter in Acts chapter 2 interpreted Old Testament scripture. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies as a footstool for your feet. Romans chapter 8, Jesus is at the right hand of the Father, who also intercedes for us. So when Jesus was at the right hand of power in heaven, he was coming on the clouds of heaven. Now that does sound kind of weird to us today, but when we go to the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 13, an oracle concerning Babylon, this is God prophesying his judgment upon that evil, wicked nation. The day of the Lord is coming, cruel and with fury and burning anger, to make the land a desolation. It's talking about Babylon, but when Jesus is talking in Matthew 24, he's talking about Israel. He will exterminate its sinners from it. For the stars of heaven and their constellation will not flash forth their light. The sun will be dark when it rises, and the moon will not shed its light. This is the exact same language in Matthew 24, guys. This isn't talking about the sun literally being darkened and the moon literally not giving its light and the stars literally falling from heaven. This is figurative language that God himself has used in the past, and it would be perfectly fine in interpreting it figuratively. Like, we don't have to go, oh, let's just take this verse here. Oh, I think it means this. No, we can use the same symbols and just plug it in. It's not like I'm making this stuff up. Now, verse 31, he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. First thing, the word angel here doesn't always mean angel. Like, I could send my angel to someone to send them a message. Angel just means messenger, and sometimes in the New Testament, it's literally translated as messenger, but here it's translated angel. So this could be very well be talking about, you know, the announcement of God going out to all the nations to gather in all of the elect. And obviously the great trumpet of God, that's commonly used in the Old Testament when it's talking about just God announcing something, just a new thing that's going to happen. John chapter 11 as well, Jesus did not die for the nation only, but in order that he might also gather, all right, gathering together into one, the children of God who are scattered abroad. If you're watching this video right now and you believe in Jesus, we are a part of those children of God who have been scattered throughout all of the nations, and we're being brought together into one flock, of course. Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and put forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. Some people take this and think that this is talking about Israel becoming a nation in 1948. So they're just desperate in trying to make all of this fit into like our times and make it relevant for us. It still is. We can learn from this, but this isn't talking about, you know, thousands of years into the future, because it's pretty clear in verse 34, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. People will accuse Jesus of being a false teacher, but as I have shown today, these things did actually take place within that generation in the first century. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. That goes with the last video I made yesterday about the heavens and the earth. It might have been 2 days ago, because I'm actually recording it in the same day, but posting it, I don't know. But yeah, the heavens and the earth, the elements of the old world passed away. Boom, we're in the new world right now, and things are not going perfect, but getting better and better towards Jesus's second coming, the final coming, not the coming on the clouds of heaven to judge the nation of Israel, but to judge the entire world. Also, you'll notice here, verse 37 through 40, people use this to support the rapture thing, but as in those days before the flood, like in Noah, they were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. Guys, it was the wicked people who were taken away, not the righteous. The righteous will inherit the earth. We want to stay here and live. We don't want to be taken away, okay? So it just goes to show how people can just twist stuff so much to teach things that just aren't taught in the Bible. Well, that's going to be it for today. Love you guys so much. Comment down below if you have any questions. I'll see you in the next video.